Welcome back to the Perek Project. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast. And in the Perek Project, we spend just a few minutes looking at the timeless wisdom that's contained within Pirkei Avot, within Ethics of the Fathers, and we see how it's got so much wisdom that can relate and enhance our everyday lives. One of the things that never fails to amaze me is how so often when I'm learning or teaching a Torah idea, either I or the person that I'm learning with will have a moment where we say, oh my goodness, this relates to just what I'm going through in my life right now. And the truth is, the study of Torah and Torah for its own sake is so much greater. What do we mean by that? So firstly, we're referring to all of Torah, the values, the principles, the relationship, etc., everything. And studying for its own sake means for the sake of practicing the Torah, for the sake of developing a proper character and for the knowledge of God's Torah. It comes from a love of God and a desire to build our relationship with God. Now, someone who does this, they merit so many things. Aside from the spiritual benefits, which we'll talk about in a minute, there are so many worldly benefits that they get, that a person gets when we decide to study Torah for its own sake. In fact, the entire world, which means all of history, is worthwhile for such a person. Why? Because Torah infuses the world with purpose and meaning. In fact, someone I know was not involved in the Jewish community for many, many years. And about a year and a half ago, they made the courageous decision to come back to the Jewish community amongst much difficulty. And so often she tells me, since I came back to the Jewish community, my life has so much more meaning and so much more purpose. When a person studies the Torah, we're humbled by its vastness and its depth, and it prepares us to be righteous in both mitzvot between God and man, and also in those between man, and also to be fair in our own personal development. All of this starts from the study of Torah, and it also gives us protection from sin. What's fascinating also is that it can even give us an understanding on how to give good advice on worldly matters. Why? Because the Torah is the blueprint of the world. We're told that God looked into the Torah and then created the world. Everything is contained within the Torah. In fact, there's an amazing story told about the Chazon Ish, a rabbi who lived in Israel who had no medical background at all. And he was often consulted on medical cases. And the following story will give you an insight as to why. Because there was once a boy who was very sick and he was in a coma. And the doctor said that if he didn't wake up within 24 hours, there was no hope. And the Chazon Ish heard this story and he said, no, as long as the boy wakes up within 72 hours, he'll be fine. And what happened is that the boy woke up after 24 hours, but within the 72 hours, and he then went on to make a recovery. And in fact, one of the Israeli neurosurgeons commented after he passed away and said, I wish that I could still consult with the Chazon Ish and on medical matters. He was asked, how do you know all this? And he says, everything I know because I learned the Torah so much. Finally, the Torah makes a person different. It makes us great because it helps a person to see the world from a godly perspective. And we see that everything in this world and everyone in the world is worthwhile. We see that everything that God does from a higher perspective, and we see that God does it for the good. Everything in the world has a place and is done for a higher purpose. Now, sometimes when we jump into Torah, it's like a hot bath. At first, if you jump into a hot bath, at first it's ouch, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. But once you get in, it's a delight. And that's the same way it is with Torah. At first, it may be a different, uncomfortable. But once we are in, it is an absolute delight. Those are the benefits. But if a person chooses not to engage, not to study the Torah, then every single day, God will send us messages. And in fact, one of those messages is when a person feels hollow inside. Oftentimes that comes from not engaging and not studying Torah enough. And it is up to us to listen to those messages that God puts in our hearts and in our minds, and also in our lives. It's like a person who was asked by the king to count all the coins for 2 hours, and he was told, you can keep all the gold coins that you counted. And what did the person do? They fell asleep. Now, that person lost out big time, right? And what did they show? They showed that they didn't value the gold. Obviously, that's not an insult to the gold, because the gold has intrinsic value, but it shows how he values the gold. And it's the same thing. The more we invest in the Torah, the more we show how much we value it. And Torah is much more valuable than gold because it is eternal. So what is the Torah? The Torah is a source of freedom that allows us to be loyal to ourselves and to our godly soul. Now, you might think to yourself, freedom? That sounds strange. What I know about the Torah is so many do this, don't do that. But you know what? All those do's and don'ts, they give us the freedom to rise above our passions and to live in internal harmony. If you've ever tried to do a goal, but gotten held back because what you wanted, or you were too lazy, you weren't motivated enough, you know how frustrating it is when we hold ourselves back. When a person studies and lives a Torah life, they have the ability to rise above themselves and to live in eternal harmony, to achieve spiritual greatness, and that is true freedom. And because Torah is so valuable, anyone that we gain Torah knowledge from, we have to respect, even if it's just a letter of the Hebrew alphabet, because even the letters of the alphabet have meaning. Thank you for spending your time and studying Torah with us today. You're on the pathway to true freedom and living a life of spiritual greatness. Thank you again. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please spread this word and subscribe for future episodes. Have a great day.